We are on the eve of the US presidential election. Who would be a better American president for Europe, for 3Cs initiative, for Hungary, and for Poland? My guest is Zsombor Zeöld, a director of a Transatlantic scholarship program, Budapest Fellowship, and a former attache of Hungarian Embassy in Warsaw. This is a special Against the Tide TV program from Poland, Eunika Chojecka. Zsombor Zeöld, it's a privilege to have you in our TV.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, Eunika.
Thank you so much. Zsombor, I want to talk to you about U.S. presidential elections. We are on the eve of that. And how do you assess the presidency of Donald Trump, especially when it comes to his actions towards Central and Eastern Europe and, of course, the 3Cs initiative?
So when President Trump became President of the United States in 2016, 2017, the new administration, as usual it is, they started to lay out plans for foreign policy and for other areas as well. And they published a new national security strategy of the United States that laid out the foundations for the forthcoming 4 years concerning foreign policy. And that document said openly that the United States thinks that they are going to enter a new era in which great power competition will be back or will be back on the agenda. And there is in the form of standing up against Russia and China. And this strategy said that Europe has a special role in order to counter Russian and Chinese influence all over the world. And this is the reason why the Trump administration turned back to Europe with more openness towards how to counter these. And in that sense, in this framework, the Central European region had a special role, and this was one of the reasons why the United States supported the creation of the 3Cs initiative. So if we remember and go back in time to the 3Cs initiative's 2017 summit in Warsaw, it is no coincidence that President Trump paid a visit to Warsaw during that year. Just to show support towards the initiative as a whole, and just to show support towards the region as well.
And what do you think, what could President Trump do to improve this U.S. and 3Cs initiative cooperation?
I think the United States and President Trump did a lot in concerning how to improve this relationship. So for years, the United States was a bit reluctant towards financially supporting the initiative. And in circles in Washington, there was a saying that, yes, we do understand the need of European countries, that they want to build this initiative up. But we do want to see first how the region can cooperate with each other. So, they understood as well that we're talking about the cooperation between 12 countries, 12 EU member states. But they wanted to see the extent of cooperation in between themselves. They understood and accepted that this initiative will be somehow led by Poland and will be somehow fueled by Polish steps. But they wanted to remain, let's say, a bit outside of this initiative. But come the year 2020, when U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo went to the Munich conference in February this year and stated openly that the U.S. is ready to provide financial support towards the initiative. And come the last summit of the 3Cs initiative a couple of weeks ago in Tallinn, Estonia, where the U.S. pledged an additional sum of $300 million to the initiative. So I think, concerning the short answer to your question is this: the U.S. has done many things to support the initiative. And thanks to the actions of both the Department of Energy, both the White House and last but not least, the United States Congress. I think the foundations have been laid out that this initiative will be supported in the forthcoming years as well in the US.
And what do you think what Donald Trump could do to improve US-Hungarian cooperation?
I think the relationship in between Washington and Budapest in the past couple of years have been improving, and I think especially concerning the as compared to the era under President Obama, the relations are way better. This is due to the fact that openly the U.S. administration under this presidency did not criticize the actions of the domestic actions of the Orban government. What they've done is they try to focus, and I think successfully, they try to focus on those issues that connect the two countries. Let it be energy security, let it be cooperation inside NATO, for instance, and leave open criticism out of this framework. So in retrospect, in perspective, one of the main differences in between how the Obama administration approached Central Europe and how the Trump presidency approached Central Europe was concerning energy security. So we have been experiencing a revolution in the United States called the shale gas revolution around 2017. And this is the first moment in time when US companies decided to export liquefied natural gas to other parts of the world, such as Europe, such as Central Europe. And this is the first moment when the United States supports openly any kind of diversification project in Central Europe that would allow these countries to break away from Russia. So I think that definitely made a huge impact on Hungarian American relations, and also the framework that NATO provides. This is also basically true for this as well. So this administration has been criticized quite a lot concerning the language they use, on NATO issues. President Trump has been really vocal in saying that each and every single member of the NATO alliance should adhere to the 2% expenditures for military affairs or military expenditures. But I think this led European countries to understand deeply that this NATO framework cannot be or can be only maintained if they take stock, take responsibility for their affairs as well. So I think right now in Hungary, we see a big development concerning the rebuilding of the Hungarian army. This is called, a separate program has been inaugurated in order to let this happen, called Zrínyi 2026. The Hungarian government openly pledged to have at least 2% allocated for military hardware for the Hungarian army in the forthcoming years. So I think this couldn't have happened without a good relation in between the Trump administration and the Hungarian government.
Let's talk about the second candidate, Joe Biden. And how do you comment on the words of Joe Biden, who equated Poland and Hungary with the authoritarian system of Lukashenko in Belarus?
First of all, I do not see that these words helped in any regard the transatlantic relationship in between Hungary and the United States. But in order to understand this, we need to take into account that the presidential campaign in the United States is about to convince voters who's going to be the next president / the better candidate / I don't know how to say it. And in that sense, this is a struggle for votes and struggle for voters. So if the Biden campaign decided that this would be the line they're going to take in order to convince voters that they are the better candidates, they have responsibility in this. But in the end, it will be the voters who decide who's going to win and whether these words actually fall into the category of being true or not. But once again, I do think that these words did not help the transatlantic relationship at all.
What do you think, how will be the effects of Biden's victory for the U.S. Cooperation with the Three Seas Initiative and with the Central and Europe?
In the past about 1.5 years or maximum 2 years, the United States Congress have been working on bipartisan initiatives supported by both Republicans and both by the Democrats that paved the way forward to the continuation of the Three Seas Initiative. So I think, concerning the legislative side in the U.S., the Congress definitely supports the initiative as it is. And there were some voices inside the Biden campaign who said openly that, should a Biden presidency happen, they're not going to break away from the idea of supporting the Three Seas Initiative. But there's another factor here. So the Obama administration focused on Asia as for the first priority of their foreign policy, among other things. And this led to the so-called Pivot to Asia project that resulted in a diminution of European relations in between the US and the European countries. The Obama administration used an approach to Central Europe that can be characterized by this. They went to Germany. I mean, the US went to Germany first and basically said or asked the Germans to maintain relations with Central European countries on their behalf as well. So this is how the United States, back that time in between 2012 and 2016, maintained, I think, a bit interesting relations with Central European countries. So most of, more or less, not direct but indirect relations. I think there is a chance that the United States will go back to this relationship. One thing is for sure, that US-German relations need to be maintained and need to be mended as well. The thing is that it's a question for the future, how much of this mending will result in a changing relationship in between Central European countries and the United States concerning the direct relationship.
And do you think that this Three Seas countries located between Germany and Russia can cope without the cooperation with the US?
Strictly speaking, no. So I need to turn back to the financial counterparts of the questions you've asked beforehand. I can only comment in a positive way what Poland has done in building up the financial backbone of the initiative called the Three Seas Initiative Investment Fund, or TSIIF. So that fund has been created basically thanks to the enormous help of the Polish bank, Bank Gospodarstwa Krajowego. But BGK, the problem with the financial backbone was that besides BGK or BGK, we rarely see any other financial instruments coming, financial institutions coming from Europe that is about to openly support the Three Seas Initiative financially with a substantial amount of money. So, strictly speaking, the US's financial contribution to the TSI has been enormous, essential, and I do hope that it will continue to do so.
And you have been speaking during the discussion in Lublin at webinar the United States on the V4 about the problem of the lack of leadership in Europe. How would you explain this problem?
Whenever we are talking about US foreign policy, in Europe at least, we tend to forget the US maintains, throughout the history of the country, say a really interesting method how to do foreign policy. So the US didn't want to become, so I'm told actually, so I was told, to become a world power, but it just happened that they become one. And this state of going into just maintaining foreign policy, maintaining extensional foreign policies with the region or with the country, is you need to poke the United States' interest to a certain level in order to let it happen. So what the United States wants from its not junior but senior partners is to take stock, take responsibility, especially, over or concerning initiatives that are their initiatives and not the United States. So 3Cs initiative is a product of Central European countries, and what the United States wanted to see is that besides the Polish government, besides Poland as a country, more and more countries will take responsibility over the initiative and its future. And unfortunately, to some extent, it didn't happen. So when I was talking about the lack of leadership, the lack of ownership that the United States sees concerning the 3Cs initiative, I was commenting on this. So this is a purely, US perspective on Central European affairs.
And how would you explain to the world why the 3Cs initiative and the V4 initiative are so important not only for Europe, but for the whole world?
Not dodging the question, but, I think my answer would be at least partially tied to where these people are coming from. So what I can tell you is this. The Visegrad 4 has been one of the most stable institutions that has been created about 30 years ago in Central Europe. And that gives us, countries of the Visegrad Cooperation, a huge legacy. But unfortunately, the situation has changed a bit. I think concerning the sheer size of the initiative, because our 4 countries unites about 64 million people. This is not a sizable initiative as compared to, for instance, the 3Cs initiative. So in a regional perspective, Visegrad 4 is an important one and continues to be so, continues to remain important. It also can project a couple of ideas, a couple of projects to the area of the Eastern Partnership as well. Concerning the 3Cs initiative, this is the largest framework at the moment who is able to definitely support US foreign policy goals, such as standing up against Russian influence and standing up against Chinese influence in the whole region. So this is one of the reasons why the US started to support the whole initiative, just to have a framework set up that is more or less defined and that serves actual, and really clearly defined foreign policy interests.
You mentioned China. How would you evaluate the growing influences of the Communist China in Europe and in Hungary?
It's definitely growing, and I do not like what I see, in a sense. So whenever we are talking about Chinese influence, I think we are talking about the combination of 3 separate factors. This region, let it be the Visegrad 4, let it be the 3Cs initiative region, or let it be the Western Balkans, definitely needs any kind of additional support concerning financial support that would tackle the development issue here. So this region has been lacking money for development concerning, for instance, the north-south infrastructure corridor, for instance, and another main project as well. This is the first thing. The second thing is that basically based on this, these countries need to look for projects or financial supporting schemes that are financially acceptable for them. And this is the second. And the third is China, being a communist country, is not concerning China, that is a communist country, we cannot really apply clear or clean market rules as in relation with their foreign policy maintaining and how they project foreign policy goals. So what the Chinese are doing in this sense is really simple. They do offer solutions well below the market price. And this is why some of the countries in the region, let it be the Western Balkan countries, let it be other countries in the region as well, are taking this initiative and taking these opportunities because they can save money for other projects. I do not think that this is a good solution, but still, what we are talking about here, shadedly at least, is there's no counter proposal from Western European countries coming from Western European countries, coming from Western European companies, in order to, let's say, mitigate the Chinese, the influence China is gaining here in the region.
That is a problem we are talking about in our TV also. You're a director of Transatlantic Scholarship Program Budapest Fellowship. And could you tell us what this initiative is about?
Yes, thank you very much for this question. So the Budapest Fellowship Program, as you mentioned, is a transatlantic program directed and dedicated to host a couple of American scholars in Budapest for the duration of 10 months each year. The creators of this program are a Washington-based organization called the Hungary Initatives Foundation that has for years been working on sending Hungarian scholars to the US for further education, to work alongside think tankers, and so on and so forth. And the other organization is a Budapest-based one called Matthias Corvinus Collegium. What unites these two organizations for the same goal, for the purposes of the Budapest Fellowship Program, is basically talent management. So MCC, or Matthias Corvinus Collegium, has been deeply engaged in talent acquisition and talent development in Hungary. The target group is talented Hungarian youth. And HIF, or the Hungary Initiatives Foundation, has been deeply engaged in for the same goal, and basically with the added value of reinforcing Hungarian-US relationship, and basically the transatlantic relationship in that sense as well. So a couple of, in this year, 4 US scholars have arrived to Hungary. They're doing their own research, and they are taking part in a Hungarian language class. They are taking part in a series of seminars that are dealing with the history of Hungary, for instance, and they do have meetings with people who can shed light on various topics concerning Hungarian foreign policy and Hungarian domestic politics as well.
Zsombor Zeöld was my guest. Thank you so much for your time.
Bardzo dziękuję za możliwość.
Bardzo dziękuję. Thank you so much. It was Against the Tide TV. See you soon.